The coffee mug was exactly where I left it. That bothered me more than anything. It was still sitting on the edge of the countertop, handle turned outward, the rim faintly stained with her lipstick. Raspberry mauve. Same shade she wore the night she told me the pitch might go late, and not to wait up. The house was still. Too still. Like it had agreed to play along, to pretend nothing had shifted. But I noticed. The silence was heavier than it used to be. It pressed against the windows. It crept under the bedroom door. And her perfume hadn't fully faded from the hallway. That part haunted me. It wasn't the obvious kind of betrayal. No broken plates. No loud fights. No storming out into the rain. No slamming doors. That would have made things easier. Clean. Decisive. But no. This was surgical. Cold. A betrayal wrapped in politeness and soft lies, tied with a bow. She came home at 2:34 a.m. I wasn't waiting for her. That's the lie I told myself. She walked in with that calm, curated smile, the kind people wear at airport gates or press events. The meeting went great, she whispered, like we were sharing a secret. Lennox says they're almost certain to sign. Lennox again. Her new project partner. He used to be a bullet point in a sentence. Then he became the full paragraph. Lately, he's the whole page. She slipped off her heels like nothing had happened. Told me the place they went to after the pitch had velvet walls and a piano player who only did 80s ballads. She laughed when she said it. I didn't. I watched her walk to the bedroom, humming something I couldn't place. She didn't kiss me goodnight. Just said, you'd have been proud of me. She had no idea how long I'd been sitting in the garage earlier, staring at the dash of her car, still glowing with her last destination on the GPS. Not the presentation hall. Not the bar. It was a hotel. One I'd never been to. One we'd never been to. That was 2 hours before she walked in like nothing had happened. I didn't ask. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just reached for the folder I'd already hidden under the bed 3 weeks ago, the one I swore I'd never open unless something felt final. Inside it was the envelope. I've had it ready for months. It's not revenge. Not really. More like a shift. Like moving the coffee mug just 2 inches to the left. She'll find it when she least expects it. And when she opens it, she won't hear shouting or insults. She'll hear silence. Because silence, when it's deliberate, is louder than anything she's ever heard. I didn't sleep that night, but not in the way you might think. I wasn't pacing. I wasn't crying into a pillow or screaming into the void. I just sat there on the floor beside the bedroom door, where the light from her phone screen flickered like a silent fire through the crack beneath it. Every now and then, I'd hear her laugh. Quiet. Breathless. The kind of laugh people give when they feel wanted. It wasn't for me. I could have barged in. I could have asked her who Lennox really was. I could have played the betrayed husband card and demanded the truth. But I didn't. That's not how I work. I'm not the storm. I'm the drift, the slow, relentless current you don't see coming until it's pulling you out to sea. And that night, something in me shifted. Not broke, just tilted. The next morning, she made eggs. Just like that. As if nothing had happened. She hummed while she cracked the shells, wore the same t-shirt I bought her from the Monterey trip she barely remembered. She asked me about my schedule like things were normal. You have a client call at noon, right? She said, sliding the plate across the table like she hadn't just come home smelling like an unfamiliar hotel shampoo. Yeah, I replied. That's all I said. Just, yeah. She smiled. That same curated smile. I was thinking we could go to the coast this weekend. Clear our heads. Just us. And for a second, I swear, I believed her. Because that's how she was. She didn't lie with venom. She lied with warmth. And that's the part that made it worse. Later that day, I started looking through the bank statements. Not obsessively, just gently. Like peeling paint off an old wall, slow enough not to tear anything. One dinner receipt stood out. From the night of the presentation. Not at the steakhouse she claimed, but a French place on the outskirts of town with a wine list thicker than most novels. 1 entree. 2 drinks. Room charge bundled in. I looked it up online. Velvet walls. Soft jazz. Private booths. Everything about it screamed affair. Still, I didn't confront her. Instead, I waited. Waited for her to lie again. For her to test the edge one more time. And she did. Just 2 nights later, she told me she had another strategy session. Late. Again. I might crash at Lydia's, she said, not meeting my eyes. Depends how late we go. Lydia. The friend who'd moved to Portland 6 months ago. I just nodded and said, drive safe. She hesitated at the door, like she was waiting for me to say something else. I didn't. She left, and I closed the door quietly behind her. I already knew where she was going. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have imagined, was that I'd been preparing something for her. A different kind of strategy. While she was out, I placed the envelope inside her jewelry drawer, right between the necklace she never wore and the bracelet she said she lost 2 weeks ago. Inside the envelope, a printed photo. Just one. It was of her and Lennox. Taken outside the hotel. No captions. No notes. No yelling. Just evidence. A silent postcard from the truth. And beside it, I left the second item, the reservation for the coastal cabin. The one I had booked 2 weeks ago for our anniversary. I circled the check-in date and wrote beneath it, "Take him. I won't be going." Then I walked into the guest room, laid down on the old couch with the squeaky springs, and stared at the ceiling fan until the sun came up. The next morning, she still hadn't found it. But when she does, the silence won't just speak. It'll scream. She didn't find it that morning. Not even close. She breezed through the house like it was just another weekday. Hair in a neat bun, navy blazer sharp as ever, her perfume lingering in the air like a smoke signal from another life. I watched her grab her travel mug and check her lipstick in the hallway mirror. No hesitation. No guilt on her face. Just that same smooth confidence I used to admire. Before she walked out the door, she gave me this odd smile, more like a reflex than affection, and said, "Don't forget to water the basil." The basil. The stupid plant I kept alive for 2 years while she forgot it even existed. I stared at it for a while after she left. One leaf had started to brown. Around noon, I got a text from her. Presentation follow-up went great. Might stop by that vintage bookshop after. Want anything? I didn't reply. Not out of anger. I just didn't want to participate in the charade anymore. It was like pretending to clap after a magician you knew was hiding cards up his sleeve. I let her drift deeper into the fantasy she'd built around her double life, while I stayed rooted in what was left of reality. Around 7:40 p.m., she came back. I heard her walk in, keys jingling, the familiar squeak of the hallway floorboard. Then silence. Too much of it. No greeting. No, "I'm home." Just an eerie stillness. I stayed in the guest room. Lights off. Barely breathing. Listening. Then I heard the sound. A single, short gasp. The kind someone makes when the world tilts without warning. She'd opened the drawer. I could picture her eyes scanning the envelope, her fingers trembling slightly as she slid out the photo and the reservation slip. The silence that followed was endless. No footsteps. No movement. Just the thick, suffocating air between us. And then, a whisper. I couldn't make out the words. Just her voice, small, unraveling. A few minutes later, I heard her heels clicking slowly toward the guest room. She didn't knock. Just stood there on the other side of the door. I could hear her breathing. Unsteady. Finally, she spoke. "Silas, can we talk?" I didn't answer. A moment passed. "I don't know how to explain any of it," she said softly. But it wasn't supposed to go that far. Lennox was, it started as nothing. That sentence hung in the air like a rotten fruit. It started as nothing. Like that made it better. Like the betrayal had a grace period before it counted. "I made a mistake," she added, "but I still love you. Please believe that." I almost laughed, but it came out as a breath through my nose. Still, I said nothing. "I'll cancel the trip," she said quickly. "We don't have to talk right now. I need you to know I'm not walking away from this." More silence. I could hear her shift slightly. Maybe waiting for a response. Maybe hoping I'd invite her in. But I didn't move. Eventually, she left. The sound of her footsteps retreating down the hall felt like an entire novel being rewritten. Later that night, I walked back into our bedroom for the first time in 2 days. She was curled up on her side of the bed, clutching the photo like a crumpled tissue, eyes wide open and staring at the ceiling. She looked at me and whispered, "I didn't expect to lose you this quietly." I didn't answer her, because in that moment, I realized something crucial. Losing me wasn't loud. It was methodical. It was already in motion. And the silence? That wasn't punishment. It was the first step of her consequence. The next morning, the air between us was so thick I thought I might choke on it. She didn't mention the photo. She didn't say a word about the reservation. She didn't ask why I had stayed in the guest room for days or why I hadn't touched the food she left in the fridge. Instead, she tried to do something far worse. She tried to pretend we were fine. She made coffee. For both of us. She added cinnamon to mine like she used to, back when gestures meant something. She even played our morning playlist, soft indie tracks we once slow danced to in the kitchen before work. I sat at the table, staring at the sugar jar, wondering how many times people fake smiles over breakfast before something snaps. She slid the mug in front of me and gave this tight-lipped smile. Her eyes were puffy, but her posture was firm, shoulders back, chin up, like someone trying to reassert control after slipping. "We can talk tonight," she said. "After I'm home." I canceled everything else. I nodded, not because I agreed, but because I didn't know what else to do with my neck. As she left for work, she touched my shoulder in that tentative way people do when they're afraid of the answer to a question they haven't asked. I didn't flinch, but I didn't lean in either. She paused like she might say something more, then walked out the door. The moment it clicked shut, I stood up and looked around the house as if seeing it for the first time. The walls we painted together, the books we alphabetized, the framed photo of us at the lake, all of it felt tainted. Nothing was physically out of place, but everything felt rearranged. I opened her closet, not to snoop, not to invade, but because I needed to see what was real. It hit me how much of our life had been built around performance. The color-coded outfits for business trips, the carefully arranged vanity, the scent she wore depending on the type of meeting. I had memorized her rituals without ever being invited into them. And now, even those rituals felt like camouflage. I found a second phone in her purse, buried under makeup bags and half-used lip glosses. I didn't even know she had a second number. It was locked, of course, but the last text preview on the screen showed just enough. "Linux, that weekend changed everything. I miss you already." There it was. Confirmation. Not suspicion. Not doubt. Truth, pure and undisguised. I placed the phone back exactly where I found it. I didn't scream. I didn't call her. I didn't throw anything. Instead, I walked to my studio, opened my laptop, and pulled up the email draft I had written the week before. It was addressed to her company's HR director. Nothing accusatory, just a polite inquiry, asking if it was company policy for managers to accompany junior partners to private overnight retreats for strategy alignment. I hadn't hit send, but I did now. After that, I began packing a single duffel bag. Just enough clothes for a few days. My passport, my camera, a journal. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I had to go. At least long enough to break the rhythm, to remind myself that I existed outside of this house, this marriage, this slow erosion of my dignity. Before I left, I took one last look at her side of the bed. Perfectly made. Not a wrinkle out of place. I slipped a small envelope under her pillow. Inside was a single line. "You chose a lie that smiles over a truth that bleeds. I won't be here when it cracks." And I left. No slamming doors. No dramatic pauses. Just the soft click of keys being placed gently on the counter. I didn't drive far that day. Just 3 hours north to a town I barely remembered visiting with her during our second year of marriage. Back then it was a weekend escape filled with hiking trails and overpriced lattes. Now it felt like exile. I checked into a small cabin-style inn off the highway. No ocean view. No fireplace. Just a bed, a desk, and a silence that didn't ask anything from me. I turned off my phone the moment I walked in. Not airplane mode. Not silent. Completely off. I didn't want to see her name. I didn't want to see how many times she tried to explain something that couldn't be undone. I needed space. Not to punish her, but to breathe. And the air felt different out here. I spent the first night walking through the woods behind the inn. No real path. Just crunching leaves and fading light. I kept thinking about how lies rarely come all at once. They show up in pieces. Tiny shifts in behavior. Delayed texts. Changed routines. You tell yourself it's stress, work, burnout, anything but what it really is. Because admitting betrayal means admitting you were the only one still playing by the rules. By morning, I woke up with a tightness in my chest that had nothing to do with her. It was me. It was years of suppressing my gut instincts. Bending backwards to accommodate her ambition. Telling myself that being a supportive partner meant having no boundaries of my own. I opened my laptop. My inbox was flooded, most from her. Subject lines like, "Please talk to me. I messed up. We can fix this." I didn't read them. I clicked on one email, an automated reminder from the cabin rental on the coast. The one I'd booked for our anniversary. She never canceled it like she said she would. In fact, it had just been checked into 2 nights ago. I don't know what possessed me, but I called the front desk of that cabin lodge. I asked if a couple had arrived under our reservation name. There was a pause. "Yes," the clerk said slowly. "Checked in Friday evening. A woman and a man. Blonde, taller guy. No hesitation. No doubt. She went with him. She went with him. After all her whispering at the door. After all her words about not walking away from this. She had. She just didn't wait for me to respond first. I didn't cry. I wish I could say I did. I didn't even get angry. What I felt instead was sharper, cleaner, like the final click of a puzzle piece, the kind that locks the rest of the image into place. I spent that entire day writing, not to her, to myself, a letter I'd never sinned, but needed to finish. I wrote everything I never said aloud, all the moments I let pass because I was too afraid of losing her, the way she slowly conditioned me to believe her emotional distance was my fault, that I had to try harder, be more present, be less sensitive, stop asking questions. By nightfall, I took that letter, folded it carefully, and slid it into an envelope. I wrote her name on it and tucked it in the inside pocket of my bag. It wasn't for her. Not really. It was a mirror. If I ever saw her again, I'd hand it to her. No speech. No explanation. Just that envelope. Let her see what it looked like, what years of quiet compromise felt like when written out in ink. That night, I turned my phone back on. One voicemail from her. Short. Breathless. Silas. Please. I'm so sorry. I didn't expect it to go this far. I was scared, and then it all got out of control. But I'm still me. Please don't let this be the end. I'm begging you. Come home. Or tell me where you are. Please. She sounded like a stranger. I deleted it. And then I booked another night at the inn. Not because I needed more time to think, but because for the first time in years, I finally didn't owe her anything. The third morning at the inn, I woke up before sunrise, not because I couldn't sleep, but because I finally could. Not well, not peacefully, but uninterrupted. The type of sleep where your brain stops reenacting arguments you never had and conversations that ended before they began. I lay in bed staring at the wood-paneled ceiling as the world outside turned from black to deep indigo, and then to gold. I hadn't called her. I hadn't texted. And I didn't plan to. I had no strategy anymore. No twisted revenge fantasy. No need to teach her a lesson. I just wanted the noise to stop. The lies. The manufactured apologies. The white noise of her voice filling every room without ever saying anything real. But of course, people like Kaylin don't let go quietly. She found me. I don't know how. Maybe she checked my old browser tabs. Maybe she remembered the name of this place from that weekend years ago. Either way, she showed up just after noon, her car tires crunching over gravel outside my cabin window. I was sitting on the porch with a half-drunk cup of coffee and a paperback I wasn't actually reading. When she stepped out of the car, she didn't look like the composed version of herself, the one who left for meetings in silk blouses and sculpted heels. She looked undone. Hair in a knot, oversized hoodie, sunglasses she didn't take off. She spotted me and froze. For several seconds, neither of us moved. Finally, she walked over and stood at the bottom of the porch steps, holding something in her hands. My envelope. The one I left under her pillow. I read it, she said, voice low and shaky. All of it. I nodded. Good. I don't know how to fix this, she said. You don't, I replied. You just stop pretending it didn't happen. She hesitated, then stepped onto the porch. I didn't take him to the cabin. Not for what you think. I needed someone, anyone, who didn't make me feel like I was disappearing into spreadsheets and late-night calls and guilt. And that someone just happened to be the man you slept with? I asked. That stopped her. Her lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to deny it again. But she didn't. Not this time. I wanted to feel wanted, she said quietly. You were, I replied. You just didn't notice. She sat down on the opposite bench. Close enough to talk. Far enough that I didn't have to move. She looked out over the woods, squinting against the light. I didn't come to beg. I came because I realized I never really saw you. Not like you saw me. I didn't say anything. I wanted her to keep talking, not because I hoped for some miracle confession, but because I needed to hear her sit with her own failure. For once, I needed her to sit in the discomfort I'd lived with for months. She pulled out her phone and showed me something. A message. To Lennox. I can't do this anymore. It was a mistake. I'm going to try to fix what I destroyed. The timestamp was from 2 days ago. I almost laughed. You still think this is about fixing us? I asked. She turned to me, finally removing her sunglasses. Her eyes were swollen, not from one night of crying, but several. I don't know what I think. I just know I hate who I became. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, and finally looked her straight in the eyes. You didn't become anything. You just stopped hiding who you already were. Silence again. But this time it wasn't empty. It was heavy, like a drawer filled with everything we never said to each other. She stood up, slowly. I'll go. I just needed to say it to your face. You didn't deserve any of it. You're right, I said. I didn't. And then she did something I never expected. She left. No more speeches. No more pleas. No more half-truths disguised as raw emotion. Just the sound of her footsteps walking away, for once not towards something else, but away from me. I sat there long after her car disappeared around the bend. Not crying. Not relieved. Not angry. Just still. Because I knew something she didn't. This story wasn't hers anymore. It was mine now. And for the first time in years, the ending was mine to write. I didn't return home the next day. Not because I was avoiding her. At that point, I knew she was gone, at least physically. I could feel it. I hadn't checked the security app, but I had a sense that the house had already started erasing her in subtle ways. A towel moved, a perfume bottle no longer on the dresser. These are the sounds you don't hear, but they echo louder than slammed doors ever could. I stayed another night at the inn, and then one more after that. On the morning of the fourth day, I woke up to a weathered calm in my chest. It wasn't peace, not exactly, but it was the feeling you get when the storm's passed, and your house is still standing. Damaged, missing a few shingles, maybe a shattered window, but standing. So I drove home. The highway looked different than when I left it. The same lanes, the same signs, but everything felt stripped of illusion now. Every billboard reminded me how much I had ignored in my own life. Every mile brought back flashes of the man I used to be, the one who thought loyalty was enough to make someone stay. When I walked into the house, it was cleaner than I'd left it. That detail rattled me more than I expected. She had come back, tidied things, sanitized the betrayal. The kitchen counters were spotless. The couch had been vacuumed. The bed was made, but not our kind of made. The pillows were stacked the way hotel rooms do it, squared, sterile, impersonal. She had left a note on the dining table. White cardstock. Her handwriting. I stared at it without touching it for 5 solid minutes before I unfolded it. It said, I'm giving you the space you need. I'll be staying with my sister for now. I won't ask for anything. I just wanted to say I read every word. And I deserved every one of them. And that was it. No declaration of hope. No plea for forgiveness. Just the residue of someone who finally realized the depth of the wound they caused. I should have felt closure. But what I felt instead was exhaustion. The kind that seeps into your bones and makes you want to sit on the floor for hours, even when there's a perfectly good chair nearby. I sat there in silence, letting the reality settle around me. And that's when I remembered the gift. Not the envelope. Not the photo. Something else. Something I'd put together weeks before all this broke open, back when I still believed our anniversary trip might happen. It was a wooden box I carved by hand. Took me 2 months, working late at night in the garage, smoothing the corners, inlaying small strips of mahogany and walnut. Inside it, I had placed 8 folded notes, one for each year we'd been together. Each one held a memory, a fear I had confessed, or something I loved about her that I never managed to say out loud. The last note said, I know we're not perfect, but I'd still choose you, even in the next lifetime. I never gave it to her, but now, it felt like it needed to be returned. Not as a symbol of love, but of truth, what was, what might have been, and what had now definitively ended. So I took the box and drove it to her sister's place. I didn't go inside. I left it at the door with no note. No signature. No explanation. It didn't need one. Because what do you say when love has died in such a quiet, elaborate way? When it wasn't a gunshot, but a slow hemorrhage? You don't say anything. You just let the silence do what words never could. On the way home, I passed the florist she used to love. I pulled in and bought a single daisy, her favorite flower, ironically. I placed it on our porch when I returned. Not as an invitation, just as punctuation. That night, I slept in our bed. Alone. And it didn't feel like loss. It felt like oxygen. 2 weeks have passed since I left the wooden box at her sister's door. I haven't seen Kaylin since, and surprisingly, I haven't felt the need to. There were no late-night texts after that. No sudden knocks. No emails begging for a second chance. Just stillness. But this stillness wasn't hollow anymore. It was healing. I started doing something I hadn't done in years. I walked without my phone. Just me and the world as it is, not as someone says it should be. At first, I'd wander our neighborhood aimlessly, hands in pockets, feeling that strange absence where us used to live in my chest. But then I started noticing things. The sound of wind between fences. The smell of soil after rain. An elderly woman with a corgi who nodded at me like we'd known each other in a past life. It was the first time I realized I'd been so consumed with keeping a crumbling marriage together that I'd forgotten how to live in the present moment. I also returned to my workshop, not for repairs or distractions, but to build something new. I started designing simple furniture again, chairs, side tables, things I could make with my hands while letting my mind breathe. I donated the first few pieces to the local shelter, just because. No grand gesture. No Instagram post. Just doing something kind for strangers. One afternoon, while picking up supplies at a lumber yard, I met someone. Her name was Clara. She was there for cedar boards, building raised beds for her school's garden project. She wasn't dramatic or magnetic like Kaylin had been, but she had this warmth to her, like a campfire rather than a spark. We talked about wood grains, laughed about bent nails, and parted without exchanging numbers. But she came back the next day, not for more boards, just for coffee. We didn't talk about pasts, just books, and dogs, and why the smell of sawdust always reminded her of her grandfather. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel like a man trying to prove his worth again. I was just a man, sitting across from someone who wasn't trying to fix me or use me, just someone who saw me as I was and didn't flinch. I don't know what will happen with Clara. I'm not jumping into anything. I'm still healing. But that's the beautiful thing. There's no rush, no timeline, just space, room to rebuild. As for Kaylin, I heard she's still staying with her sister. Maybe she's reflecting. Maybe not. I don't need to know. That chapter closed not with vengeance or bitterness, but with truth, and that's enough. I learned something in all this. Sometimes the loudest victories come in whispers. In choosing silence over shouting. In walking away without a final argument. In giving a gift not to repair what's broken, but to lay it gently to rest. The gift I left her wasn't the envelope or the photo or even the wooden box. The real gift was the moment I stopped trying to be enough for someone who never saw me clearly, and chose, instead, to be whole for myself.